So the first question here: what is IVF?
So IVF, sorry. Oh my goodness. Is really a subsection of things that are under what we would call assistive reproductive technology, or ART. So, anyways, in vitro fertilization is when the egg and sperm come together outside of the body. So you have in vitro, which can anything that happens outside of the body in the lab. So that could be anything. It just happens in this case to be in vitro fertilization, or in vivo, which happens in the body. So that would be your route that people would usually say as how they conceive, which would be intercourse between a man and a woman.
Okay. Okay. So basically, the egg gets fertilized outside of the body in a lab.
Correct. And then once that egg is fertilized, you can either do a fresh transfer. So um in the office I used to work at, they have different protocols for different ways you're doing your in vitro. So this can go down a big rabbit hole. So I'll try to keep it very general for our purposes. But it does get very deep. But you can do a fresh transfer, and then at a certain point, it's almost as well, it's not almost, but you are like mimicking the process that would normally take place in someone's body. So you fertilize the egg outside of the body, outside of the womb in the lab. And then also at the same time, the woman that's preparing to receive the fertilized egg is taking something we call like a trigger shot. That mimics ovulation. So to get her body ready for that, well, that's prior to, that's when they prior to them I'm sorry, uh taking out the eggs. So let me start from the beginning. There's a lot that happens prior to you even getting to the IVF process. So that's something to understand. So just as an overview, there's like testing involved on the woman's part, the man's part, to make sure what actually is the cause of the infertility, which could be for women it could be like an early menopause, and so that means their body is not producing as high quality of eggs. Women are born with all the eggs they'll ever have. So when your baby girl is born, when our daughter was born, she was born with all the eggs she will ever have. Not all of those eggs will come to maturity. um Only about like 500 of those eggs come to maturity in their lifetime, and then of course not all of those eggs that come to maturity, meaning they're released from the ovaries, will they be fertilized. And then on a man's end, it could be something going on with his sperm. Either the guys aren't swimming fast enough to get to the egg, or they're not going through their process to actually um crack the egg, if you will, because once one sperm reaches the egg, gets through a little barrier wall, then nobody else can get it. So that's a a biological process that happens. And so those are just some ways that infertility can happen. Also, sometimes we can't even explain it. Other times there's like a structural thing going on, whether it be like the uterus isn't receptive to having a fertilized egg there, or the fallopian tubes are blocked. So many different things. So anyways, we go through this whole process, we go through the testing. The woman takes a lot of hormones to overproduce eggs, so that these eggs, and then she takes a trigger shot. And then once the trigger shot is done, it's mimicking ovulation. So this is all a controlled thing that we're doing. Then the eggs are harvested. It's a I don't know if anybody's watched this podcast, but it's called the retrievals, and it gives you the side, as a side note, of what happens when women are not properly anesthetized when they go through this retrieval process. So it is a very strenuous process for them to retrieve the eggs from your ovaries. And so you might feel like a Matt Tick truck hit you afterwards,
Mm.
sometimes, but it is a grueling process. And you got to remember you're taking all these hormones and things just to get your body ready, and you might not produce as many eggs as we're hoping that you produce. And you're coming, like, getting your blood work checked every day, sometimes on the weekends. We did things on the weekends because a cycle never stops. And then um monitoring their follicles is what they're called before they become, well, they're eggs, but they're also called follicles. Monitoring that they get to a certain measurement so that those are viable to be retrieved. So anyways, you take a trigger shot, they harvest those follicles, and then they go to the lab, and then depending on what process you would like to do, then they fertilize the eggs with the sperm. And so then once that happens, getting back to what I was saying, you can do a fresh transfer. So that would be pretty soon after you did the retrieval and things like that. Put them back, the fertilized egg, into the uterus and see, if a pregnancy results, meaning like on a blood test, we say, oh, you're pregnant, that kind of thing. Or they can do a frozen transfer where they freeze the embryo at a certain level, and then when it's time, whether it's you were just doing it for fertility preservation, or if you aren't, your uterus, if you will, isn't ready right then and there to have the embryo transferred back into you, they can do it at a later date.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that was pretty good. Breakdown. So in this process, is it quite common that a fertilized egg will not produce a pregnancy, or will not?
I'm not gonna say it's quite common, but yes, that is a possibility that we do discuss with the clients. That just because you had the right amount of eggs, everything went great with fertilization. Sometimes at fertilization, not all the eggs fertilize, because if you just let them fertilize as they would have fertilized in the body, meaning you just put the egg in the specimen dish with the sperm and still let the guy swim to the egg. That's one way you could do it. Or people pay additional money to have the egg the sperm physically fertilized into the egg. It's called ICSI. So anyways, even doing all of that, that's why God is in control, honestly, which is one of the scriptures we're going to talk about, saying that you knit me in my mother's womb. This process is still mysterious, even though we've tried to do it this way.
Mm.
Only God is the one who can make it happen. And even the physicians I have worked with have said before retrievals, like, it's in God's hands. I'll do my part, but it's still in God's hands.
Mm.
So I have heard that before.
Mm.
So we're under no illusion that, I hope we're not, that we are able to play God. We cannot play God. So I just think about that scripture, like, you knit me in my mother's womb. You'll have to read it properly, but I'm paraphrasing here, but
Yeah.
meaning,
Yeah.
like, what does that mean, he knit you in your mother's womb? He's not a god of confusion, right? He
Mm-hmm.
knit you. What When you knit, I'm not a knitter, so knitters out there, please bear with me,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm thinking knitting is, like, so intricate, right? And so it starts with the smallest thing, and then you create a beautiful blanket, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're under no illusion, and that's one of the conversations, that even if we do all of this and your uterus, we made it ready with all the medicines, everything, we put the embryo there, you can still have a miscarriage, unfortunately.
Mm.
Or you can still not take. So that is a possibility.
And what is a miscarriage?
So a miscarriage would be any loss prior to 20 weeks gestation.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. I did not know that. Listen, you talking you talking that talk. Are you talking in French too a little bit?
I
So
tried to keep it
no, but you're doing great. You're doing great.
manageable. Okay.